All right, Thrive Nation, on today's edition of the Thrive Time Show, we are interviewing the CEO of Cal Entertainment. Again, we're interviewing the CEO of Cal Entertainment by the name of Christopher Lee. And on today's show, he's going to share with you the keys to becoming an effective professional speaker. You see, his company is the speaking agency of choice for Jim Kwik, best-selling author Chris Voss, Nolan Bushnell, the man who invented Atari, the Shark Tanks, Daymond, John, Magic Johnson, and many other speakers that you know. All this and more on today's edition of the Thrive Time Show on your radio and podcast download.
Get ready to enter the Thrive Time Show.
We started from the bottom, now we hit. We started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. We started from the bottom, now we hit. We started from the bottom, now we hit.
We started from the bottom, now we're on the top, teaching you the systems to get what we got. Colton Dixon's on the hooks, I break down the books. Z's bringing some wisdom and the good looks. As the father of five, that's why I'm alive. So if you see my wife and kids, please tell them hi. It's the C&Z up on your radio, and now 3, 2, 1, here we go.
We started from the bottom, now we hit. We started from the bottom, and
Yes, 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 and yes.
Yeah.
Dr. Z, it's always ecstasy when you are next to me.
Right
How are
back
you, sir?
at you. I am fantastic. I'm fired up for 2021, and I'm ready to get it on like Donkey Kong.
Now, brother Dr. Zellner, you know this. A lot of people in the game of business, we're business guys.
Yes.
But eventually, people who are good at business, they say, I want to become a speaker.
Yes, because I have so much knowledge that needs to be shared.
You know what I mean? That once someone's mastered a craft, a lot of times they want to give back and teach other people how to do it. And so on today's show, we have sort of a guru of all things speaking. Christopher Lee, welcome on to the Thrive Time Show. How are you, sir?
Well, thank you very much. I'm very well, thank you. How are you guys doing?
I feel 2% better now that you're on the show.
That's fair.
That's fair? Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
and hopefully it'll get more towards maybe 10% by the end of the show.
It could improve.
It could.
We're on
I'm
the
hopeful.
way up.
We're hopeful.
Now, can you explain for us, for the listeners out there, Chris, what's the name of the company that you're the CEO of, and what exactly do you guys do?
Well, that would be Cal Entertainment, and otherwise known as Cal Entertainment Speakers. And what we do is we represent speakers. So there's a lot of corporations and associations out there in the world who come to us and who are regular customers of ours who depend on us to suggest the perfect speaker to them for their event. Or they may come to me and say, hey, I want this guy or that gal as a speaker, and I'll go get them for them. We also represent a couple dozen or so speakers exclusively. So everybody in the world, goes through me to get those speakers, and our team here. And they're wonderful people who are really experts and thought leaders in areas that are specific, and they may probably be the best in the world at what they do or one of the best.
Chris, your organization represents Jim Kwik, the host of the major bestseller Limitless, a living legend and the godfather of skateboarding. You got Rodney Mullen. You've got Chris Voss, the author of the bestseller book, the best-selling book, Never Split the Difference. We've actually had him on the Thrive Time Show. Another living legend, Nolan Bushnell, the godfather of the video game industry, and so many other big-time personalities. When did you first figure out what you wanted to do professionally?
Well, I've always been in sales. So I was in sales, kind of right out of, college and those years where you're coming out of high school trying to figure out what you want to do. Sales attracted me. My dad was a salesman. So I knew I had it in me, I thought, but I really, really sucked at it at first. And I kind of went back to the restaurant in Beverly Hills I was a host for. And I was like, will that be smoking or not? And eventually I knew I had it in me. I thought a lot about the jobs I had failed at. And I kind of went back to one of the guys I worked for and said, let me try this second time. And he said, you're never going to make it a second time. If you don't make it the first time, you're not going to make it. But I did make it. I put my mind to it. I understood what the deal was, which was really just relating to the customer, understanding who the customer is, but where they're coming from, what they want and what they need. And so I was just really doing sales for many years. And then one of my friends told me about his mom, who was actually running a business like mine, who eventually then retired. But the truth of the matter is that it was a perfect marriage for me to get into this business because I already was good at selling things, and I love, thought leaders. I love experts. I love books. I love shows where people are on there kind of talking about themselves, like, Oprah or 60 Minutes or Charlie Rose and those kinds of shows. And that's why I love having my own interview show called Virtually Speaking now, where I'm really just interviewing the top speakers in the world, not only the ones I represent exclusively, but just the best speakers that are out there. I've got Daymond John from Shark Tank coming on this week, and that's exciting. But just really talking to people about what they believe in, who they are, kind of like you do, and also from the meeting professionals' point of view, which are my customers. The customers for Cal Entertainment are the meeting professionals, the people who are putting together these amazing events around the world and are looking for incredible speakers or thought leaders or experts or entertainers to present as keynotes or other types of speakers or breakouts for their events. And I really love finding out what it is they're looking for and then marrying that perfectly with the perfect speaker.
Christopher, that just comes right into my next question I had for you, this Dr. Z, and that is, there are a lot of people out there listening to the show right now saying, man, I'd like to be a speaker. I'd like to go around and talk. I'd like to be paid to get up on stage and perform in front of a crowd speaking. And so just out of curiosity, whenever these companies call you, as a general rule of thumb, what are the qualities that they're looking for? Not the specifics. Obviously, if they're a tech company, they may want somebody that knows how to that maybe invented the Fitzer valve or something like that. Very, very technical. The Fitzer valve, very technical. Not a lot of people know a lot about the Fitzer valve. But what are some of the qualities they call up and say, hey, we want somebody? Is it funny? Is it? I mean, what are they looking for?
That's a great question. I think the king of what they're looking for is content. Right? The people in their audience can either be inspired by the speaker or the expert or the thought leader, or they can be educated, to do something. So Chris Voss, for instance, who you've had on your show, what's he the king of? Negotiation. There's nobody better on the planet talking about negotiation as a topic and helping you get better as a negotiator and therefore a better communicator and definitely a better person as a leader and also in sales. That helps us tremendously. So if anybody has like a leadership conference or a sales conference, they're going to want this topic of negotiation. So they kind of figure out what, the themes or the topics are that they're looking for, and then they kind of marry that to their audience. But the speaker has to be talented. They can't be monotone. They can't be boring. They have to be dynamic. Some can be way more energetic than others. Like you guys are at the top of energy. You guys are like the Tony Robbins energy level.
Welcome, because we're on hot coals all the time.
It's amazing. It's fun. It's exciting. And a lot of speakers are great at that. And then there are speakers who are down a couple notches from there, but still very dynamic and still very compelling. And people are hanging on every word that they are about to say next.
Now, see, a lot of great speakers that Christopher books, they don't need props.
They don't?
No, they don't need.
How do they get along without props?
They don't need props. They're just that good. However, we need props. So for the next question, I will use a megaphone to ask you the question here. So
there you go,
Christopher.
When did you feel like you were gaining traction with your career? Just want to ask you that question, and because I don't have any talent, I'm using a megaphone to make up for the lack of talent.
That's good call. Yeah. Well done, Clay. Well done.
Some of my favorite speakers have used. Some of my favorite singers have used the megaphone in recording some of their vocals on their records. So I like that. I like that a lot. It's a very good way of differentiating yourself. And the question, and your question was, when did I feel like I was getting traction in sales or with what I do now?
With what you do now. I mean, because I think there's a lot of people that maybe want to get into the speaking industry or become a booking agent or an agency. When did you feel like you were starting to really gain traction? Because now, I mean, you're working with huge clients.
That's a great question. I think you do what you love to do, and you really enjoy it. That's so cliche. Everybody always says that. But once there's this word of mouth thing happening, and that actually goes for the speakers too. In fact, and that kind of goes back to a question you asked me earlier. People, how do they get into the speaking business? And there's a lot of people out there who might want to do that. And how do people get better in sales and doing what I do in similar jobs? The truth is, I think the world will give you feedback. So if you're a great speaker, right, and you're out there doing a couple gigs and they're freebies, they're for your son or your daughter's school or your friend's school or church or their company because you have a great story they wanted you to share with them, and you start getting this word of mouth feedback as a speaker, that is when you know you're doing it right. And I think in my job as well, people start introducing me to other people that I should represent. Oh, you should really represent this guy. He's such a great speaker. I get that a lot. I would personally rather meet the meeting professional who needs a speaker than yet another speaker, because I've got so many great speakers that I already know and love. But there's so many people who want to be great speakers and who wake up and say, I want to be a speaker. It doesn't really happen like that. I think the world around you tells you should be speaking. Maybe you wrote a great book. A lot of people are going to come to you and say, oh man, I love your book. Will you come speak to my audience about, the content in that book? Or if you just are a cool guy who everybody likes and you're great in business and you're killing it, then a lot of people around you might say, come and help my sales team, or come and help, the PTA group that I'm a part of, and help us be better at what we do.
Christopher, what is the range that your speakers charge? I mean, give me don't say names, of course, but give me like the low end versus like the high end. And how long would that be for? I mean, like that'd be for like a week and a half of speaking, or no, I'm teasing. So,
a week and a half of
where's
speaking.
like the low? So what? Each speaking engagement is usually 30 minutes an hour. What's
How
the
much,
usual?
how much does Magic Johnson charge to speak?
I did want to say names, but I mean,
I just want to know.
Yeah, okay.
You don't
know.
want
Up
to ask.
there. It's really, really up there. I booked Magic a lot during the pandemic, and the great thing about the pandemic for the speaking world is twofold. Is the meeting professionals and the events are actually able to afford big names for a lot less money than they used to, because they weren't going to have their conference virtually. They weren't going to have a virtual conference, but now they have to. Now they are, and now they can get Magic Johnson because he fits into the budget of what they had before, or maybe it's a little bit less, but so many speakers really kind of come down about 25% to 50% on their fees. And I'll just put it this way. I think most events on this planet are working with about a $5,000 to $10,000 budget for their speakers. That's very common. $10,000 to $20,000 is still also quite popular as a budget people have for speakers. And then there's, of course, the big name speakers who are kind of household names. When you walk down the street, most people know who that is. They can get up to be in that $50,000 to $100,000 range. Or if you have a major book, a book that's just huge, it's doing really well. It's on the front of the newsstand, or it's on the front of the bookstore at the airport. Those speakers are usually going to be kind of in that 30, 40, 50, and maybe even up. But the celebrities who are really famous athletes and CEOs and people like that, that can be a $50,000 to $100,000 range. But I say the bread and butter is between 5 and 20, and the most common is kind of between 5 and 10. So there's a lot more speakers that are those fees, obviously, that are available to those planners.
And you take 95% of that, and then you give them little scraps off the table. You're like,
nowhere.
Here's a couple $100. Just keep it. Remember, no curse words for Maytag. Okay, now get out there and do your thing.
Yeah.
Now,
exactly.
How did you go about getting your first 10 clients? How did you do that?
You mean the speakers I represent? Again, It was word of mouth. It was introductions. It was people saying, I never even thought I was going to represent anybody exclusively. I was just happy to recommend the perfect speakers to the people who mattered to me more than anybody else were the customers. My clients were really my customers who were booking speakers. And I just wanted to suggest the perfect speaker to them for what they needed, for their budget, and for that theme of what was it, leadership? Was it marketing? Was it communication? Was it, really specific like negotiation, or, was it something along the lines of grit or resiliency? What are these different themes and topics people are looking for? And I want to just marry the perfect speaker suggestions for them. And I'm really good at helping a speaker understand, or helping the client, the customer understand kind of the key words that the speaker kind of represents and is an expert in. So Chris Voss is easy because that's negotiation. But then I also represent, Jim Kwik, who has an incredibly huge book called Limitless. You mentioned it earlier, and a big podcast, which is called Kwik Brain with Jim Kwik. And it's one of the top podcasts in the world. And what is he? He's a brain coach. He helps people, get their brain to be at the highest level it can be so they can remember things better. It's a memory training thing. It's a mind clarity thing. So when you wake up in the morning, you should do these things so that you can remember everything faster, better. You can read much faster, retain all this information better, and also make better decisions and be more creative. And the audiences that would love a speaker like that are audiences with executives and leaders, leadership conferences, because those kinds of people are always looking to make themselves better or a better version of themselves at their jobs. So that's what Jim Kwik does. So, my first 10 clients were really just recommended to me by people who knew me and said, you should represent this guy or that guy. And that just kept on happening. And not everybody's a great speaker. So even though you meet a whole bunch of speakers, only a small percentage of them are really amazing and will cut through. Just like in any industry, in any job, there's only a small percentage of people who are great at what they do, like you guys. You guys are incredible.
Oh, you're great, Christopher. What's the thing that you find whenever someone says, hey, there's a great speaker, and you go and you check them out? What is usually some of the things that disqualify them, or you go, you need to check, or if they ask for advice, things that you can coach them up on? What are some common things in that arena for our listeners?
Well, it's really simple. Is the guy or gal boring? That's not good.
That's not good.
Is there content? Is there no content? What are they talking about? Is it something that I can really use that can help me as a meeting planner, who's looking at my audience? Who's my audience? Are they salespeople? Are they entrepreneurs? Are they offering some content or expertise that people can really use? Are they saying it better than anybody else has ever said it? I represent Rodney Mullen, who's a legendary skateboarder. You mentioned him. What does a skateboarder have to teach us? Well, he's a champion, so he knows how to win and all that, but that's not what he really is better at than anybody else maybe on the planet talking about. It's grit, it's resiliency, but it's also creativity and innovation, because this guy actually created most of the tricks that people use in modern street skating. If you go to the skate parks in towns all around the world, all the tricks that the people are performing there at those skate parks, he invented most of those tricks. So it's creativity, it's innovation, and then grit and resiliency. You have to get back up off the ground. They fall down a lot.
Sure.
It's a very hard sport to master because they're getting injured all the time. And it's incredibly hard just to get the trick done. So that's where you realize, is somebody an amazing speaker? Because they have something specific they're really good at, and that they can say better than anybody else on the planet has ever said that, or as good as some of the other people. So it's really content and delivery. If you're just talking about, I climbed the top of Mount Everest, well, there's hundreds of other speakers who are talking about that as well. And it's a lot of people to talk about doing the same thing. So how do you differentiate yourself?
Yeah.
Eric Weihenmayer is a blind gentleman who was the first blind person to get to the top of Mount Everest. Well, that's a differentiating factor. And he's also a really great speaker. So that's pretty cool too.
Yeah.
So it's just about the content and the delivery.
Do you have a lot of speakers that talk about things they overcame in their life? Like, for instance, is there a slot on your board for Clay Clark to talk about how he overcame having such a large head?
A large melon. When you're
and
gored,
how that has affected him.
When you wear a size 14 and 3/4 hat.
Everything he does in his life, getting in and out of doors.
Yeah, the doors have been expanded. The typical door is only yay wide.
Is there an overcome kind of category there
that yay
that we could just kind of pimp him out and make some money on him finally?
Well,
I think you answered it right there.
My head does look small on the screen. I feel like I have to lean in a little bit so I can match up my size here. But the truth is that, and I've talked about this recently with some incredible people. Everybody out there, I have a guy who I just had on my show, virtually speaking, a great speaker named Paul Smith, who wrote an incredible book, Lead with a Story. He talks about leadership but with storytelling. And storytelling is his area of expertise. And people literally call me up and say, we want storytelling to be, we want a great speaker on storytelling because we want to be better at that so we can be better at sales. We can tell our story better,
Right.
yada, yada. But, he and I talked about, and he loves stories, right? He loves finding great stories to tell, and he loved finding great people with stories. And we talked about how every human being on the planet has an incredible story, probably some more compelling than others. But a lot of those stories have to do with overcoming adversity and resiliency and overcoming something that was very difficult. Now, there's some obvious ones, people who were, injured, people who suffered a tragedy in their lives and overcame that. I mean, it's obvious, where a lot of these great stories come from. And yes, that's a huge category. And that goes with change, how to deal with change, how to deal with circumstances. How do we deal with the circumstances that are around us? I have a great speaker named Dr. Kevin Elko, who's an incredible speaker on how do we deal with the circumstance and how do we not let it affect who we are and how we feel. He's an incredible sports guy. He works with University of Alabama and all these other NFL teams. He has 30 rings that are either Super Bowl or national championship rings.
What?
Because he helps those teams deal with that adversity of their lives and of the game and how to stay focused and how to not let that external circumstance that may be crisis, maybe tragedy, whatever it is, or just being in a difficult situation. How do you deal with that?
Z,
So there's a lot of speakers who speak on a wide variety of things having to do with that.
Z, on our show, we're not the kind of show that's going to do passive aggressive, shameless attempts to pressure our guests to make declarations
would
on
never,
the show.
we would never do that.
Aaron Antis, you know this. You've never seen us do this.
Oh, never.
And so we talk about overcoming adversity. Should Daymond John be unavailable, or should Chris Voss be unavailable, or some of these big names he's mentioned?
Some
should
of
they
the
be
some of the
unavailable?
big ones, yeah.
I am not going to make my talk available called "How I Pumped Gas,"
Yeah.
because there was a time when my card wouldn't go through,
Right.
and I just kept
Did you overcome
swiping.
that? Wow.
And I realized you have to put it in just right. You know what I'm saying with the card,
It
where
was
it's the
credit
magnetic
card. It wasn't even the pump.
Yeah, and it was like this. It was like I could have driven back home.
You could have.
I could have just gone home, but you know
could
I
have
didn't.
given up.
No, this is a true story. This just happened. I swiped it once, and it says it was not. The card couldn't be read.
Wow.
And I thought,
That's a moment.
well, I'm gonna do it again.
I'm going to get back
Now,
up on that horse.
Now, if you can believe it, Chris, I had to go into the store. Aaron, I walked my body
Wow.
into the store.
That must
During
that
a
safe?
pandemic, no
Was
less.
that safe?
No, in a pandemic, and I got the attention of the person who was working there.
Oh, no.
And at first, he didn't give it to me.
No, of course.
And
Well,
I
of course.
pushed through, and I could go on for 45 minutes explaining what happened during those 3
don't.
minutes. During
Please-
those,
please don't.
See, I could go in for 45 minutes to explain what happened during
hardly
those
wait.
No,
during
let's
those
not.
3
Hardly
minutes.
wait.
I could do it.
That's
Okay, well, I'll
okay.
tell
But
you
I'm
what,
not available
You get
to share.
started.
I'm not
I'll be
gonna-
right back, okay? You get started, Tiger. I'll be right back,
Should
okay?
one of your virtual speakers sprain their ankle and be unavailable to speak, I am not available for that gig.
Just
I'm
Wow,
not
you're
fishing.
playing
I'm
hard.
not
That's the
fishing
hard-
for a deal here.
Chris, that's the hard-to-get move that he's perfected.
All
by
right,
the
all
way.
right. Okay, we have time for. We have time for two final questions.
No,
it's lightning
this
round.
is fine. We got to keep him on a
Lightning
little longer.
round.
Okay, lightning round.
Longer.
Here we go.
Christopher,
Here we go.
You've got the microphone. We have, some of our shows will have 1 million downloads. Some have 500,000. Some have 7 downloads. That's the one about my overcoming
That's what your mom
gas
did. Your
adversity
mom
one.
could- right.
But no, seriously, we have a lot of listeners listen to the show.
That's
What
great.
if you could just share with the listeners? Is there a main principle or a main message that you want to share with the Thrive Nation?
Well, if it has to do with becoming a speaker, and you think that you are somebody who has a message to share, then you probably are. I mean, if you've had people around you tell you, man, you really helped me out, and your story is so amazing, what you've done, what you've accomplished, or what you've overcame, and then I think that in sales, Chris Voss, going back to him, he talks about negotiation, and I have so many other people, thankfully, that I've been, influenced by, who I've come to know, who are speakers, and this stuff kind of rubs off on you, and you learn it, and you kind of let it all sink in, and you know, there's definitely commonalities that I hear a lot of things that are similar, and one of those things is empathy, and one of those things is connection with the person you're dealing with in business. So if you can really connect with people and listen to them and really understand where they're coming from and not worry about where you're coming from and really authentically do that, then you're going to have great relationships and great customers. And as speakers, it's all about being authentic as well. If you're up there on stage and you're being authentic about what you believe in and what you know, and you care about this audience, and you're delivering it in a way that's interesting and somewhat entertaining, then you're gonna be pretty successful.
Chris, have you ever seen Steve Martin live perform?
Not in person, but I have seen a lot of video, and I enjoyed what he did with Martin Short recently as well.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, Z, you and I saw him perform at the casino in Tulsa.
So fun.
Oh, you saw it in person?
Oh, yeah, and one of the things he did that blew my mind is he talked about how he didn't want to be there, sincerely.
Sincerely.
And he was like, folks, I can tell you this. You might be asking, what choices have I made to be at this casino? On the
at
river
this
here,
age, at his
this
age, at this age, after
and he's
all I've
like,
done in my career,
I didn't save anything. He was going on and on talking about, but he was being sincere, and it was funny, but it was like he had this deep empathy with the audience, because the audience is kind of wondering, like, man, why did he come to this casino? You know, and he addressed it and he connected. And he was being sincere about not wanting to be there.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, well, and since you guys have, he starts talking about his props on the stage. I remember he says, and so we invested in some of the better props Martin and I have here. He's talking about his stool.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, this stool was several $100. And
yeah,
that's probably what you paid for your tickets. So
yeah.
thank you.
Thank
I
you.
mean, it was
You bought a stool.
But I think just connecting with your audience is so powerful. Now, a final question I'd have here for you. If anybody out there wants to learn more about you, is there maybe a book you'd recommend? Is there a website you'd recommend they go to? Where can our listeners learn more about Christopher Lee and all things related to the Cal Entertainment Agency?
Thank you. Yeah, it's calentertainment.com. CAL Entertainment. You know, we have the Cal Entertainment Speakers YouTube page where the virtually speaking show lives. And we have 30 episodes so far of interviews, and we're going to do a lot more with really only great speakers that I created that show. So meeting professionals really could have a place where they could always go every week and see a whole bunch of different great speakers being interviewed and talking about their story and where they came from, who they are, what they believe in, and what the content is that they're delivering to their audiences. And it's a fun conversation.
See,
Okay, Chris, my last question.
Okay, fine.
Two-part question.
Two-part.
One,
yes, please.
Juan, have you ever had a request for a speaker that you were unable to fulfill?
So in other words, they wanted the speaker, but the speaker wasn't available?
Right. If they said, hey, listen, we need a speaker.
A large-head speaker.
A large-headed
who
speaker who's
overcame
overcome
adversity while pumping gas.
And
in a
knows
pandemic.
as an expert on the Fitzer valve.
The Fitzer valve.
So what do you do in that case? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, I've had that happen a lot. I mean, people want somebody and the guy's not, or the gal's not available. That happens all the time. Or their fee is too high for the budget of the person's, event. So they have to move on to another idea.
So then you ship out Billy. You're like, okay, we got to send you Billy. He's pretty good.
In a worst case scenario, yes.
But he fits your budget, or Clay. That's what you have to know. Okay, and the second part
we'll
of the
pay you to have this guy with the large head talking about overcoming adversity while pumping gas while wearing a hat that alienates half the audience.
There you go. And the second part of the second part of the question is, what is the strangest request you've had for a speaker, or the one that you went, that's weird? One pop into mind?
Oh man, no. I can't.
Like
think
a
of
midget
one.
wrestler who overcame something. I mean, I don't know. Have you had something kind of off the cuff, something kind of weird?
Definitely nothing that really surprised me. I think that, again, knowing these meeting professionals, knowing people who put together events and what they're looking for, what they always ask for is is similar and something that I expect, and nothing really surprises me.
Okay, Clay, we got to call Cal Entertainment and just request something really weird. So that when he's asked that question next time, he'll be able to say, "Oh my God, it's funny you should ask."
This
because
one
just,
guy.
this one guy.
I have a deal. Back in the day when I used to do speaking, Chris, I did get booked to speak to a group of morticians. It was people in the industry.
Oh, yeah, funeral directors.
Funeral directors, yes. And so I got there the day before to listen to the other speakers, and I noticed they had sort of a gallows humor about them. And so they were all they'd make jokes like the head of the organization got up and said, "Folks, unfortunately, sales have gone up this year," and everyone laughed. And I'm like, "Okay, I can do this."
I go with the flow. Yeah,
but I think as a speaker, you have to learn how to adapt to the audience. And as a CEO of a speaking agency, you have to know what the right speaker is for the right event. Again, one more time, what's that website if somebody out there is listening and they're looking for a speaker for their organization?
Thank you. It's Cal Entertainment, CAL Entertainment.com. Our YouTube channel is Cal Entertainment Speakers, the show Virtually Speaking, where I interview great speakers. But, that's one of my favorite points that I make and that I love is this ability for, me to find out what they want and get them some great ideas of what they need, but also for the speaker to connect with the meeting professional and the guy or the gal who's planning that event, and we always make sure they have a pre-event phone call. So they talk to the client before the event. They understand why they're there, who the audience is, what they want them to accomplish with that audience. Is it educating them to be better at something or to do something or inspiring them? But yeah, really understanding who your audience is, any speaker, and also any person in sales, understanding who they are, putting yourself in their shoes, and saying, what is it I can deliver to them that would be the best thing I could possibly do for them as a speaker? How can I relate what I've done to who they are and what they might need or appreciate more than what I could say to a different group? And in sales, just again, listening and communicating empathetically, really letting them tell you where they're coming from so you can put yourself in their shoes and then deliver.
I love having people on this show that interact with some of the best.
I know. I'm inspired.
This guy, he works with the best. If you're out there, folks, and you're wanting to book with the best, you're wanting to get a speaking agency to help you find the right speaker for the next event, check out the Cal Agency there. Check out the Cal Agency. He's the CEO, Christopher Lee. Christopher Lee, thank you for lending us some of your time. We greatly appreciate you, sir.
My pleasure. It was absolutely fun. More fun than I thought I'd have.
We get 1% better every year. 7 years of recording, Z. We're like 7% of the way there.
We are.
We are
charging. We're charging.
We got a momentum going. This year we're trending to be 1.2% better.
Don't get crazy.
Next time you're on the show, you're going to like it,
high
Chris.
Expectations.
Next time you'll really like it.
Yeah, next time.
Oh, I loved it. And you guys are going to have on Kevin Brown at some point as well, right?
That is my understanding, yes.
That's great.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you, my friend. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Well done. Go get him.
Thanks, guys.
See you,
God
brother.
bless. Take care.
And now, without any further ado,
3,